So, what will the future be in terms of women's role in the age of digital disruption? The third session of the conference today will discuss the topic Workforce Diversity, Empowering Women in the Tech World. And we're very excited to have with us the CEO of DTAC, Ms. Alexandra Reich, and the Regional Manager of Community APC at Techsauce, Ms. Lalitha Wemel. Oh, I messed that up actually. Sorry about that. Ms. Lalitha Wemel will be the moderator for the chat. And our expert is the CEO of DTAC, Ms. Alexandra Reich. So a round of applause for our next fireside chat.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And hi, Alex.
Hi, good
How
morning.
Are you doing?
Sawadika.
Sawadika. All right, so we have a very nice 20 minutes set up for us to fix the problem of workplace diversity, which I think we can do.
Right? For sure.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Before we get started, I think, would you do us the honor of sharing with our audience a little bit about who you are, what your journey has been a little bit to give them a taste, and how on earth you ended up with us in Bangkok.
Okay. 20 minutes?
20 minutes, yes, okay. Super short intro.
So who am I? I'm Austrian. I'm coming from Vienna. I've been working in the telco scene for the last 20 years, but actually my start was in investment banking. Right after my studies in Vienna. And so I had a really rough start when it gets to being a female in a very male-dominated industry. But yeah, I worked in different telcos in Europe. And about a year ago, I joined DTAC here in Thailand. At the most difficult time of DTAC, maybe, because we were just about to lose more or less our network in Thailand.
Yep.
But it was the best time to come here, and since then I feel I've joined Thailand, or I should have come to Thailand much earlier in my life.
Yes, you were just saying backstage how you feel it's become a home now. Thailand is home.
Absolutely.
Which is wonderful. So before we dive into like the larger topic which we have, empowering women in tech in the world, for a lot of industries that are very male-dominated, you know, not our fault, not their fault, everything can change. How have you felt the difference being starting off as a woman in tech, you know, decades ago, and being a woman in tech today?
Okay, so maybe I have to start that before I went, as mentioned, into tech, I've been working in investment banking, and that's really decades ago, and I was about 24 years old when I joined one of the big investment banks in Austria, and I was working in international business, and it was super male dominated. I was young at that time, quite attractive, and it was a really, really, really rough start because you can't imagine what happened to me in this time. So going into tech was actually comparably easy, and I think if you look now, who are the ones in the Silicon Valley everybody talks about,
Yep.
the guys who behave really not the way they should, they all come from investment banking formerly. So I think
it's a culture change.
It's a real culture change. But I mean, what I see a difference is there's a lot more awareness about women in tech. There's a lot more talk. There's a lot more need for women in tech. And I think they're much more accepted. I had to fight a little bit of a rougher game maybe a few years ago.
We thank you for it. It's made today easier for this generation of women in tech. Have there been, well, in your tenure, an experience that has happened throughout it that helped you help change the culture that you were in? Like an experience that happened that you continue to amplify as whether it was a teaching or a learning that you got that helped you as a leader change the culture of your teams so that it was more diverse or better in perspective of thought?
So maybe one thing, when I was very young, after being in investment banking, I really quit. And then I decided to have my own company. And that's really 1988, so it's a long time ago. And it was kind of a startup. We were developing interactive programs for companies all over German-speaking countries.
In 1998, the startup was just like business. You guys were doing business.
It was really going to a bank, going for financing, discuss. So it was very, very different. There was not a lot of money. But at that time, we built a team of developers, we built a team of designers, we built a team of a very diverse team. And it was a team of people who came from different backgrounds. Some of them were young, some of them were pretty old. And it was, for me, maybe the most intense time of managing people. But what I learned is that the diversity back then was really the foundation for our success. And how much the young people learned from the elder ones, how much I learned from the different backgrounds. I mean, I remember it was really intense leadership. I sometimes had to pick them up from the police station because they were just drunk and ran into...
What?
So I was very, very different. So today, managing thousands of people is nothing compared to managing those guys. But really, that diversity, I always try to keep to that because it's not only gender, but, you know, different backgrounds, different age, and also different ambitions made it so much more fun and so much more learning for each one.
Yep. And then moving from that, is there like a specific example of something you do when you're building teams that you take from each role that you've had to ensure that there is constant diversity?
I think I had to learn a lot over the years. One thing is, when I worked in one of the big telcos in Europe, what I saw and watched was that a lot of CEOs back then of big companies were super non-diverse. So the teams around them were more or less copies of themselves.
Yep.
One of them is actually sitting in our board now, and I always wanted to ask him, because he really... all the people around him, they were doing the same sport, they were reading the same books, they had more or less the same wives, all of them blonde and long legs. But it was kind of, you know, you could really feel there were clones of them. And I always felt there's no innovation coming from them, there's no creativity coming from them, and they're not really driving the business. So I think that's what I learned, and if I look at our team, it's very diverse.
Yep.
Also nationality-wise, gender-wise, also background-wise. And it's great to work with those people, and we have great discussions, and it's a lot of fun.
I mean, absolutely. I think the larger point to make when we're talking about diversity and inclusion is not just a gender bias thing, right? It's not just having your 50-50 split of men and women, but making sure you have enough experience, whether it's age-wise, perspective-wise, culture-wise, because, I mean, any general study will show you that diverse teams severely outperform non-diverse teams.
Yes, there are a lot of studies. I mean, looking what McKinsey has done shows really that, I mean, on EBIT, it's, I think, 18% more on average. I mean, return on capital, more than 50% if it's a diverse management team. So there are clear studies, even Credit Suisse, a Swiss-based company, has done a study that shows it. But what I feel is much more important to listen to everyone in the company, and that's what I'm very much focused nowadays, because I do believe that in a very hierarchical system as we all are in, and in silos, you always don't hear the most important voices, because they might be very low in the hierarchy, but they don't speak up, and especially in Thailand, that sometimes is a problem, that people don't speak up because they're not invited, they don't feel invited. And I think that's the reason why we also have to change the organizational setup, get younger people, get people with the, I mean, who are just joining, listen to them, hear what they're saying, and get them also being empowered.
And how are you starting to implement practices to listen to these voices to make sure that the decisions you're making are full of information from different perspectives?
So when I joined, I talked to a lot of people. So I went around the company, listened to people. There were a lot of one-on-ones, so that's one thing. The other thing is we introduced a platform which is called Open Talk. It's a platform where anyone can anonymously raise questions to me or one of my colleagues, and we just openly answer them. So anyone can talk about either business ideas or just complaining about things. So we listen to everyone and we give direct answers. And that was the foundation for a lot of changes that we have taken within the last few months. So very helpful, but it's not enough. And that's one of the reasons why we are now testing to really change the organizational setup. We're going more into an agile way of work. So we set up cross-functional teams. And I've been walking around the house, and it's just part of the organization that is now moving into that direction. And I walked around the house yesterday, and I looked at those teams. And it was really amazing, the energy, and they were loud. I mean, normally when you walk around the office, it's very silent, but it was loud, it was engaged, and it was very diverse there. And one team was only one woman. I said, what the hell is happening here? And then she said, I'm the princess of this team. But I feel it's a very different way of work, and that's the way you bring up the right people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think even in that context, when she's saying, I'm the princess of this team, it's not even negative. It's just, it's a super positive, empowered sentence that she's saying, and you've created that environment for her to be able to say that positively.
Yes, I especially in DTAC, I feel that a lot of young women feel, looking at me, that it's possible. And it's possible to really come out, it's possible to strive a career, to speak up. And that makes me personally very proud, because I feel there are a lot of great women, especially in Thailand.
And I think that's definitely not a point to be taken lightly, because having that representation, having those role models made available to women to see that it sounds very cheesy, but that it's possible. You can totally do it, right? It may sound very fluffy, but it's such an important factor that is very subconscious, that makes it into the minds of younger women on their path to career development. Have you had a mentor that kind of changed that for you, or a role model?
I had a mentor. Yes, I did. I don't know whether he ever thought he was my mentor.
Well, that's okay. They don't need to know usually.
But he was actually my boss in Switzerland. And if you would ask me which was the most difficult surrounding that I ever faced, it was for sure Switzerland, because that's the most male-dominated country I've ever experienced. And I'm married to a Swiss, by the way, who is well-educated and a bit different. But in Switzerland, it was very difficult. And my boss, he was French, Swiss, and he was constantly challenging me, because I mean, maybe that's the reason why I like to work with diverse teams, because I think I'm not totally standard, and I was not totally standard when I worked in this company. But he really helped me to use my strength in a way that they are constructive and not destructive. So he was coaching me, he was helping me, and I think he's still very proud of my career, and we are in close contact. But there were also times where we needed a coach, because I thought I would not work with him anymore.
And those are always a good mentor, so when they kind of drive you crazy, but are also challenging you constantly to do more than you think you can.
Yes, Thibaut.
And do you have kind of a vision to set something up like that within DTAC, to be more conscious about creating those, whether it's role models or mentorships, to help not just women, but men in your teams develop?
Actually, yes, we do. We are now mentoring as an MC. I mean, I think there's a lot more we have to do. We are setting up a lot of coaching sessions now. We're helping people, because we do believe change is coming.
Yep.
We need to transform as a company. We have been organized in a very traditional, siloed way. We have not been fast enough. We have not been agile enough, whatever you need. But,
all of the innovation buzzwords.
Yes, all of the innovation buzzwords. But there's a lot of potential in this company, and people sometimes just don't see what is in them.
Yeah.
And we would like to coach them and help them to let this strength coming out of them. And so that's what we are starting now. And I'm hoping that we're going to grow a lot of people.
Yeah.
And also women, especially women.
Coming from, because you just moved to Thailand and specifically working in the ASEAN Asia region for the last year, are there very big differences coming from Hungary versus here? Or is it exactly the same? Everybody thinks they're doing their best, but they're not even hitting it.
Frankly, I don't think there's a lot of difference between Europe and Asia. There was a big difference between, for example, Austria and Switzerland, where I felt Switzerland had very different values. And I don't know, but I mean, it's not long ago that women in Switzerland were allowed to vote.
Yeah.
But what I feel in Asia, and I really felt that in Thailand very much, there's a lot of respect.
Yeah.
So it's, and the respect actually gives you, I mean, the positive way to work, and it allows you to really kind of feel at home here. And whether you're a woman, whether you're Farang means foreigner, a white foreigner, the respect really helps and is a fantastic entry point.
Okay. And where do you foresee, like because, you know, we were talking about how there have been movements happening, you know, there are behaviors changing. Do you think that in 5 years, we will actually see a tangible change?
Absolutely. And the reason why I'm very convinced is, I talked to one guy from McKinsey not long ago, and he said to me, the leadership style has to change. And if you look at men, how they lead traditionally, and that's, I mean, hormones, whatever, you can explain it, brain, they lead very much, I know it, just follow me.
Yeah.
And that has been the style for many, many years. But nowadays, you know, things changing so much, being close to the customer, being much more agile, you need to get your team and you need to lead it more like a shepherd. Kind of, you know, come on, let's go. Yeah? And that's much more what women can bring to the table, because they are known for being much more collaborative, being much more kind of, you know, bringing things together, coordinating.
Community-driven.
And that's even, I mean, in all the behavioral studies, you see that women are the ones who will be maybe the leaders of the future. So I'm very convinced if I would be 20 years younger, I would be saying, this is my time. Now I can say I'm going to watch my daughter being the leader of the future.
Bless. All right, we don't have too much time left, but I do have 2 questions I want to end on. One is, I'm sure that you are always asked to be on panels like this, right? Where you're constantly talking about diversity, inclusion, women in tech, because you are an amazing woman in tech and you have done so much, you've seen so much. But is there a particular question or a topic that you're just very tired of answering and you would like to give a firm answer on it today, and then nobody will ask you this question when you are asked to speak on panels like this in the future?
So the one question I really hate is, how did you manage to become CEO?
All right, what is your firm answer on that
I really
today?
don't know. I really don't know. I think maybe one firm answer is because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I've always stayed authentic in my whole life. I think I've not changed. And my real passion is about being with people, helping people, managing people. And that's maybe how I ended up being here.
So the conclusion to that is you are an awesome person who is authentic to herself.
I think
therefore
there's some of my colleagues sitting here, so I would not answer to that now. I would let them answer that.
I will say it. I've only known you for half an hour, and I'm already convinced you're incredibly awesome. And one more thing, because we only had 20 minutes, it's a very short period of time to answer such a deep and meaningful topic. Is there a particular resource, whether it's a book or a podcast, a video, a documentary that you have personally taken in that has helped you gain perspective or learnings about having better practices or better experiences in implementing them for women in tech, diversity and inclusion, any and all of the above?
I must admit, I listen a lot to podcasts, but I actually on my way here now, but normally not about diversity and inclusion, because I think
it's just what you're living in your
yes,
life.
Absolutely. But I think it's really living what you do, and to give you what was my biggest learning in life, and I think also the most important learning for my kids, when many years ago we got a young boy from Nepal to live with us. He was about 13 years old. He came directly from Nepal, from, the middle of nowhere, and he ended up living in Zurich with us. And to live with him, to see how different his perspective was, how he had not seen his parents for the last 12, 13 years, or maybe twice in his life, and how he was coping with all the challenges, and how positive his spirit always was. I think that was the biggest learning, and how he helped our family to transform and become much more open. I think that's where I learned the most, so I think it's life that is teaching you, nothing else.
So the main takeaway from that is be open to new learnings, be open to new perspectives, and constantly have amazing people around you where you're able to learn from.
And talk to everyone. I think
talk to everyone, guys.
Whether it's a taxi driver, whether it's, just talk to people.
Talk to people. All right. On that note, I want to tell you thank you so much for this wonderfully interesting conversation that we have had the opportunity to have. And thank you all for coming and listening to this. I hope that you are able to take something away. And practice diversity in your everyday, guys.
Top Kunka.
Thank you.